Hi, I'm Elaine and I'm London Wildlife Trust's expert gardener. The basic concept of the garden is about celebrating the natural life cycles that are necessary in a healthy wildlife garden ecology. So it's about effectively celebrating life and death that's essential within a good garden that's healthy for wildlife. To build it here on the South Bank balcony, which is basically concrete, we've had to build a tray and fill it with 10 tonnes of topsoil and bring all the elements of the garden. A big element of the garden, a big feature of the garden is to use reclaimed and recycled materials as far as possible. So as you see with our trellis, it's actually made up of reclaimed copper pipes that you'd have in a bathroom. And then the shed, which is behind me, is actually made out of old scaffold planks, for example. And its living roof is a tray made out of scaffold planks as well. We have a compost bin, which is all about reusing your own waste material. So you can produce your own green waste, and so as time goes by you'd be turning this and creating your own soil, and it's quite handy to have the slats so you can remove the slats to actually access the soil that you can also use as a mulch within your garden every year. A lot of bugs naturally need recycled and decaying material, which is all about the natural regeneration again. So it's sort of relaxing your technique within your gardening technique, and so you don't have to be absolutely overzealous in tidying up. And so there is an element of letting things rot down and leaving small piles of leaves, maybe not deadheading your plants as soon as they die, because seed heads are very valuable for animals to either feed from or shelter in. But there's still always a little bit of work to do in a garden. You can't get away from it. As part of our Living London gardening campaign, we recommend that there are 7 different actions that any gardener can do. They are of varying complexity, but not one of those actions are beyond the capabilities of most people, such as planting a living roof on any kind of garden building, drought-tolerant plants, building a pond, planting a tree, a broadleaf tree, planting a species-rich native hedgerow, laying a mulch every year, maybe twice a year, and even making your own mulch, and greening up your decking, which basically means planting plants across areas where there isn't planting. All these different actions are basically quite simple for anybody to do. Some of them take a bit more time and a bit more money, such as building a green roof or building a pond. But laying a mulch, for example, is incredibly easy and anyone can do it. And it's a really essential thing to do to enrich your soil and also mitigate against water loss within your soil. As well as protecting the plants and the roots of the plants, you're encouraging organisms into the soil, which will feed other organisms, which will feed other organisms, and so the kind of chain of life continues. So the run up to autumn is a really interesting time for wildlife gardeners, and a really great time, because you don't have to be too tidy. So traditional kind of ornamental gardeners who don't garden for a wildlife friendly garden, they might be sort of thinking about deadheading all their plants, clearing away all their leaves religiously, making sure everything's really tidy, cutting all their foliage right down to the ground in preparation for winter. But actually a wildlife friendly gardener can leave piles of leaves, because that's where amphibians and insects will shelter over winter. They'll leave seed heads, which actually arguably are really beautiful and very architectural structures within a garden. But also the seed heads themselves provide food for insects and shelter as well. If somebody has a very small space for a garden, really all you need to do is pop in a few plants. It's basically about creating as much habitat and as varied habitat as possible within whatever space you have. If you have a windowsill, there's no reason why you can't encourage wildlife to it. Just by planting pots and being mindful of the plants that you plant in those pots, either through creating quite dense sheltering areas for insects or even birds to take shelter in. And the great thing about balconies or even windowsills is that they provide really interesting and potentially very beautiful stop-off points for animals as they kind of weave their way through a neighbourhood. Okay, and in this area here we're just showing how important dead wood is within a garden. It's a really valuable resource for insects and fungi as well. I think in a garden like this you'd expect to see all kinds of bees and butterflies. We have a very small beehive, and there's absolutely no reason why people can't have a beehive in their garden with appropriate training. Lots of insects. If you have dead wood standing, lots of birds will be attracted to a garden like this, not least because they'll be looking for the snails and the insects to eat. All kinds of butterflies will be attracted to the nectar, peacocks, commas, and loads of insects that you won't see but will all be burrowing away. A large percentage of plants within the garden are drought tolerant, so once established they would be able to sustain much drier conditions that are predicted for climate change within South East England. I think it would be quite a sweeping statement to say that a life cycle garden could be the final solution to climate change. But certainly within an urban environment, by planting a tree and creating as much shade and creating as much green space as possible, there'll be some mitigation against the heat island effect within a city. Top 3 tips personally, because everyone will have their own. I think mulching at least once a year in spring, if possible twice a year, so in autumn as well. It's fantastic for the soil, fantastic for plants, and it's fantastic for kind of mitigating against water loss and evaporation within your garden. Plant drought-tolerant plants as much as possible. Once they're established and watered in, you'll hardly ever need to water them ever again, thus saving on overuse of water and also of time. And just don't be too tidy in a garden. Who wants to spend all day tidying up leaves and weeding? Why not just leave some piles of leaves and a few weeds around? It's also just lovely to see to build something that we all feel very strongly about, that is very wildlife friendly, that is still very beautiful, highly ornamental, fun to be in, an enjoyable place to sit with a gin or a cup of tea, and that is still actually entirely sustainable and wildlife friendly as well.